Knowledge management.
Knowledge management is the process of capturing, developing, sharing, and effectively using organizational knowledge. It refers to a multidisciplined approach to achieving organizational objectives by making the best use of knowledge. An established discipline since 1991, see Non-ARCA 1991, KM includes courses taught in the fields of business administration, information systems, management, and library and information sciences, Alavai and Leidner 1999. More recently, other fields have started contributing to KM research. These include information and media, computer science, public health, and public policy. Columbia University and Kent State University offer dedicated Master of Science degrees in knowledge management. Many large companies, public institutions and non-profit organizations have resources dedicated to internal KM efforts, often as a part of their business strategy, information technology, or human resource management departments. Several consulting companies provide strategy and advice regarding KM to these organizations. Knowledge management efforts typically focus on organizational objectives such as improved performance, competitive advantage, innovation, the sharing of lessons learned, integration and continuous improvement of the organization. KM efforts overlap with organizational learning and may be distinguished from that by a greater focus on the management of knowledge as a strategic asset and a focus on encouraging the sharing of knowledge. It is seen as an enabler of organizational learning and a more concrete mechanism than the previous abstract research.
History.
Knowledge management efforts have a long history, to include on-the-job discussions, formal apprenticeship, discussion forums, corporate libraries, professional training and mentoring programs. With increased use of computers in the second half of the 20th century, specific adaptations of technologies such as knowledge bases, expert systems, knowledge repositories, group decision support systems, intranets, and computer-supported cooperative work have been introduced to further enhance such efforts. In 1999, the term personal knowledge management was introduced. It refers to the management of knowledge at the individual level. In the enterprise, early collections of case studies recognized the importance of knowledge management dimensions of strategy, process, and measurement. Key lessons learned include people and the cultural norms which influence their behaviors are the most critical resources for successful knowledge creation, dissemination, and application. Cognitive, social, and organizational learning processes are essential to the success of a knowledge management strategy. And measurement, benchmarking, and incentives are essential to accelerate the learning process and to drive cultural change. In short, knowledge management programs can yield impressive benefits to individuals and organizations if they are purposeful, concrete, and action-oriented.
Research.
KM emerged as a scientific discipline in the early 1990s. It was initially supported solely by practitioners, when Skandia hired Leif Edvinsson of Sweden as the world's first Chief Knowledge Officer, CKO. Hubert St. Onge, formerly of CIBC, Canada, started investigating KM long before that. The objective of CKOs is to manage and maximize the intangible assets of their organizations. Gradually, CKOs became interested in practical and theoretical aspects of KM, and the new research field was formed. Discussion of the KM idea has been taken up by academics, such as Ikujiro Nonaka, Hitotsubashi University, Hirotaka Takuchi, Hitotsubashi University, Thomas H. Davenport, Babson College, and Baruch Lev, New York University. In 2001, Thomas A. Stewart, former editor at Fortune magazine and subsequently the editor of Harvard Business Review, published a cover story highlighting the importance of intellectual capital in organizations. Since its establishment, the KM discipline has been gradually moving towards academic maturity. First, there is a trend toward higher cooperation among academics. Particularly, there has been a drop in single-authored publications. Second, the role of practitioners has changed. their contribution to academic research has been dramatically declining from 30% of overall contributions up to 2002, to only 10% by 2009, Sorenko et al. 2010. A broad range of thoughts on the KM discipline exist. Approaches vary by author and school. As the discipline matures, academic debates have increased regarding both the theory and practice of KM, to include the following perspectives. Technocentric with a focus on technology, ideally those that enhance knowledge sharing and creation. Organizational with a focus on how an organization can be designed to facilitate knowledge processes best. Ecological with a focus on the interaction of people, identity, knowledge, and environmental factors as a complex adaptive system akin to a natural ecosystem. Regardless of the school of thought, core components of KM include people, processes, technology, or culture, structure, technology, depending on the specific perspective. Spender and Scheurer 2007. Different KM schools of thought include lenses through which KM can be viewed and explained, to include community of practice, social network analysis, intellectual capital, Bontis and Chu 2002, information theory, McInerney 2002, complexity science, constructivism, Norn-Japper and Grant 2003. The practical relevance of academic research in KM has been questioned, Ferguson 2005, with action research suggested as having more relevance, Andreessen 2004, and the need to translate the findings presented in academic journals to a practice, Booker, Bontis and Sorenko 2008.
Dimensions.
Different frameworks for distinguishing between different types of knowledge exist. One proposed framework for categorizing the dimensions of knowledge distinguishes between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge. Tacit knowledge represents internalized knowledge that an individual may not be consciously aware of, such as how he or she accomplishes particular tasks. At the opposite end of the spectrum, explicit knowledge represents knowledge that the individual holds consciously in mental focus, in a form that can easily be communicated to others. Alovai and Leidner 2001. Similarly, Hayes and Walsham, 2003, describe content and relational perspectives of knowledge and knowledge management as two fundamentally different epistemological perspectives. The content perspective suggests that knowledge is easily stored because it may be codified, while the relational perspective recognizes the contextual and relational aspects of knowledge which can make knowledge difficult to share outside of the specific location where the knowledge is developed. Early research suggested that a successful KM effort needs to convert internalized tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge to share it, and the same effort must permit individuals to internalize and make personally meaningful any codified knowledge retrieved from the KM effort. Subsequent research into KM suggested that a distinction between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge represented an oversimplification and that the notion of explicit knowledge is self-contradictory. Specifically, for knowledge to be made explicit, it must be translated into information, that is, symbols outside of our heads, Sorenko and Bontis 2004. Later on, Ikujiro and Onaka proposed a model, SECI for socialization, externalization, combination, internalization, which considers a spiraling knowledge process interaction between explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge, Nonaka and Takeuchi 1995. In this model, knowledge follows a cycle in which implicit knowledge is extracted to become explicit knowledge, and explicit knowledge is re-internalized into implicit knowledge. More recently, together with Georg von Kroff and Sven Voelpel, Nonaka returned to his earlier work in an attempt to move the debate about knowledge conversion forwards. Nonaka, von Kroff and Voelpel 2006. Nonaka, von Kroff and 2009. A second proposed framework for categorizing the dimensions of knowledge distinguishes between embedded knowledge of a system outside of a human individual. For example, an information system may have knowledge embedded into its design, and embodied knowledge representing a learned capability of a human body's nervous and endocrine systems, Sensky 2002. A third proposed framework for categorizing the dimensions of knowledge distinguishes between the exploratory creation of new knowledge, that is, innovation, versus the transfer or exploitation of established knowledge within a group, organization, or community. Collaborative environments such as communities of practice or the use of social computing tools can be used for both knowledge creation and transfer.
Strategies.
Knowledge may be accessed at 3 stages: before, during, or after KM-related activities. Organizations have tried knowledge capture incentives, including making content submission mandatory and incorporating rewards into performance measurement plans. Considerable controversy exists over whether incentives work or not in this field, and no consensus has emerged. One strategy to KM involves actively managing knowledge, push strategy. In such an instance, individuals strive to explicitly encode their knowledge into a shared knowledge repository, such as a database, as well as retrieving knowledge they need that other individuals have provided to the repository. This is commonly known as the codification approach to KM. Another strategy to KM involves individuals making knowledge requests of experts associated with a particular subject on an ad hoc basis, pull strategy. In such an instance, expert individuals can provide their insights to the particular person or people needing this. Snowden 2002. This is commonly known as the personalization approach to KM. Hansen et al. Propose a simple framework, distinguishing 2 opposing KM strategies: codification and personalization. Codification focuses on collecting and storing codified knowledge in previously designed electronic databases to make it accessible to the organization. Codification can therefore refer to both tacit and explicit knowledge. In contrast, the personalization strategy aims at encouraging individuals to share their knowledge directly. Information technology plays a less important role, as it is only supposed to facilitate communication and knowledge sharing among members of an organization. Other knowledge management strategies and instruments for companies include rewards, as a means of motivating for knowledge sharing; storytelling, as a means of transferring tacit knowledge; cross-project learning; after-action reviews; knowledge mapping, a map of knowledge repositories within a company accessible by all; communities of practice; expert directories, to enable knowledge seeker to reach to the experts; best practice transfer; knowledge fairs; competence management, systematic evaluation and planning of competencies of individual organization members; proximity and architecture, a physical situation of employees can be either conducive or obstructive to knowledge sharing; master-apprentice relationship; collaborative technologies, groupware, etc., knowledge repositories, databases, bookmarking engines, etc., measuring and reporting intellectual capital, a way of making explicit knowledge for companies; knowledge brokers, some organizational members take on responsibility for a specific field, and act as first reference on whom to talk about a specific subject; social software, wikis, social bookmarking, blogs, etc., inter-project knowledge transfer.
Motivations.
There are a number of claims as to the motivations leading organizations to undertake a kilometer effort. Typical considerations driving a kilometer effort include making available increased knowledge content in the development and provision of products and services, achieving shorter new product development cycles, facilitating and managing innovation and organizational learning, leveraging the expertise of people across the organization, increasing network connectivity between internal and external individuals, managing business environments and allowing employees to obtain relevant insights and ideas appropriate to their work, solving intractable or wicked problems, managing intellectual capital and intellectual assets in the workforce, such as the expertise and know-how possessed by key individuals. Debate exists whether KM is more than a passing fad, though increasing amount of research in this field may help to answer this question, as well as create consensus on what elements of KM help determine the success or failure of such efforts. Wilson 2002. Knowledge sharing remains a challenging issue for knowledge management. While there is no clear agreement, barriers may include time issues for knowledge works, the level of trust, lack of effective support technologies and culture. Gen X 2008.
Technologies.
Early KM technologies included online corporate yellow pages as expertise locators and document management systems. Combined with the early development of collaborative technologies, in particular Lotus Notes, KM technologies expanded in the mid-1990s. Subsequent KM efforts leveraged semantic technologies for search and retrieval and the development of e-learning tools for communities of practice, Kaposi 2007. Knowledge management systems can thus be categorized as falling into one or more of the following groups: Drupalware, document management systems, expert systems, semantic networks, relational and object-oriented databases, simulation tools, and artificial intelligence. More recently, development of social computing tools, such as bookmarks, blogs, and wikis, have allowed more unstructured, self-governing or ecosystem approaches to the transfer, capture and creation of knowledge, including the development of new forms of communities, networks, or matrixed organizations. However, such tools for the most part are still based on text and code, and thus represent explicit knowledge transfer. These tools face challenges in distilling meaningful reusable knowledge and ensuring that their content is transmissible through diverse channels. Andrus 2005.